Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are back in Japan. As you might be able to tell from the change in background, I'm back in Osaka visiting my little boy over the Christmas period, which is going to be really nice. It's also my first review that I've published in a good couple of weeks. I had a really bad cough, which made filming a bit of a nightmare, so we just sat aside for a little while, and I was also really busy with work over the last 2 or 3 weeks as well, admin and things, which was kind of annoying. But now I've finally got some time again to sit down and review some beers for you. So as we often did when I came here to Osaka, we will kick off with something a little bit local. So we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel once before. The last review I did from these guys appeared on the channel maybe about 18 months or so ago. We need to make sure it's not that long again. But these guys are another relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene. They've built up a very good reputation for themselves during that time though. Quite a prolific brewery doing lots of different styles. And the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases from what I understand, although they've done a few different iterations of it. And it's a style I do quite enjoy, one that I haven't had too many Japanese brewery examples of, and also a style that I haven't had in quite a wee while actually. So yeah, needless to say, I'm very curious to see how this beer turns out. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to stick to Osaka. We're going to go to the south of the city though, to a place called Nishinari, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Derailleur Brewworks. So this particular beer is called Black Rain DD Town. It comes in at 5% ABV, and this one could be called either a sweet stout or a milk stout. It's got lactose and honey in it, from what I understand. So yeah, this is another beer that I picked up from the wonderful liquor shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Imaichi here in Osaka, one of my regular haunts when I come here. A lovely little beer shop run by Koji, but mainly his daughter Rika these days, and they've always got a great selection of Japanese beers and things from across the world as well. So somewhere that I highly recommend that you go should you find yourself here in Osaka, one of the staples of the Osaka craft beer scene. I'll put the link to their Facebook and Instagram pages in the description for you below. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Derailleur Brewworks before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist, along with a number of other things that's being added to very regularly while I'm here in Japan, of course, and quite regularly throughout the year because I visit quite often. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Derailleur Brewworks once again then. So, Derailleur, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in the Nishinari area in southern Osaka, and the brewery was founded back in 2018 by Akinori Yamazaki. So, Nishinari is actually known to be quite a rough area of Osaka, although in comparison to other countries, I think rough areas in Japan are on a different scale. But basically, after the Second World War, men flocked to the area in search of casual employment, and this trend continued until the Japanese economic bubble burst in 1993. But today, a number of the area's residents are suffering from things like drug and alcohol issues, as well as having disabilities too. So yeah, there are quite a few social problems in this area. But the brewery basically evolved from a nursing home in the area called Cyclo, and they started a cafe. And one of the goals of the cafe was to help the aging day labourers swap their morning beer for a coffee, and so many would come into the cafe, which is called revitaillement, if I can call it correctly. I'm not very good at pronouncing the French words, but yeah, ravitaillement. And basically they were asking for help finding meaningful work. But they started employing a number of the older day labourers in the cafe, and some of the workers had been home brewers previously, and this was what kind of kick-started the idea to start their own brewery. So with a bank loan and some help from a sympathetic brewer, they produced their first batch of beer in 2018, and this was the Nishinari Riot Ale, an American pale ale. And the name of this beer is a nod to the large number of Western backpackers in the neighbourhood, as well as the street battles that took place between the day labourers, the Yakuza and the police, and this made the area a little bit of a no-go area during the economic troubles of the 90s. But over the years they've done a number of collaborations with breweries across Japan and internationally, and today they employ over 70 people, the majority of whom have some kind of social or health issue. So these guys are doing some really, really good work for the community actually. But they're given on-the-job training, and they do all the tasks from brewing the beer to labelling it and to packaging it as well. But they opened a new brewery in Osaka in June of 2020, and they've now got several tap rooms in Osaka, one in Kyoto and also another one down in Fukuoka as well. But the name of the brewery is taken from the part of the bike that changes the gears, as any cycling enthusiast will know, and this was because Akinori is an avid cyclist, so he chose the name of the brewery. But yeah, as of December 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 240 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I said to you earlier, they do a wide variety of different styles, and they do produce some really interesting experimental stuff actually. So yeah, these guys are doing some really awesome work for the community, and they are one of the breweries that I really recommend you check out, in fact, and hopefully I can go down and visit the Revatailment, I can't say that word. Hopefully I can go down and visit that cafe and make a little bit of an out and about video at some point in the fairly near future. Maybe that's something I can do with Jordan, of course. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Derailleur Brewworks for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So the artwork on this one, I have to say, is absolutely beautiful, and that is another thing I'll tell you about Derailleur, is that they have a whole kind of comic book series, and a whole basically every beer has its own story. So if you can read Japanese, you will be able to appreciate that, but unfortunately my Japanese is a little bit elementary, so it kind of passes me by, unfortunately. But you can see plain silver top on the can there. This one is 330 millilitres, and I think here on the side is a little bit of the story behind the kind of comic art here on the front. So if you can read Japanese, you can pause the video and have a wee look at that. But yeah, this is of course available on their website too. But the beer itself comes in at 5% ABV. It's a sweet stout, this one, with honey and lactose added into it, so you could also say that it is a milk stout. But yeah, I've not had too many Japanese sweet stouts from what I remember, and I've not had a sweet or milk stout in quite some time. In fact, it's been a long time actually since I've had a low ABV stout, and that was one of the main reasons that this beer caught my eye, in fact, as well as the fact that it was from Derailleur. So yeah, let's get it out into the glass and see what it's all about. The Black Rain DD Town from the wonderful Derailleur Brewworks in Nishinari in Osaka. Let's do this. There we are. So here we are. This looks good actually. Yeah, I like that. So, before the head disappears, we can say safely that it's poured with about, a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say medium kind of fawn head. That's fading away to be a very thin foamy layer now, but the ring around the edge of the glass is kind of lingering there. But yeah, colour wise, this beer is a lovely kind of dark ebony sort of rosewood colour. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But I think in the case of black beers like this, you know, lactose and honey aren't going to do too much to your colour. But yeah, 1 or 2 bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But all in all, it looks pretty nice, this one. I have to say, quite impressed with quite impressed with the colour of this. It looks really nice, but if you shine the light through it, it does have a wee bit of that kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to it, in fact. So yeah, good looking stout, this one. Nothing overly surprising about the appearance of the beer when you consider what style it is. So yeah, I think we can go on and have a wee look at the aroma of this beer and see what it's all about. Oh, that smells nice. Yeah, I think this is going to be pretty solid. You know, back home in Scotland, I always used to like March of the Penguins by Williams Brothers. That was, you know, one of my local breweries. And of course, Old Engine Oil from Harveston, that was another one. The low ABV stouts, I always enjoyed them. But of course, when you go down the rabbit hole of craft beer, you tend to come across crazy imperial stouts and things like that a little bit more often. So yeah, to come across something like this is a little bit of a novelty for me. Maybe not quite in Japan right enough, but still, this is nice. So yeah, the first thing that jumps out of this beer at you is definitely the kind of the brown sugary side of things, like quite a toasty and dry brown sugar. So yeah, the way that this one pieces together aroma wise is just really, really nice. So let's try and break this down for you and describe it a wee bit more in depth before we actually taste the thing. So yeah, backbone of the beer for me, you've got a lovely little bit of that roasty toasty kind of well-fired bread crust in there. Beyond that, you've got little bits of woody character coming out of this one. So yeah, there's a little bit of woodiness in there. So yeah, a little touch of woodiness, roasty toasty well-fired bread crust in there. There's a wee bit of a sort of rye bready character as well, for sure. So yeah, a little bit of rye bread in there. On top of that, you've got a more kind of sweet wholemeal brown bread. I don't know whether to say there's a little bit of like cakiness to this one as well. It's almost got a little bit of a kind of chocolate muffin, chocolate sponge cake type vibe to it. So that's an interesting point to make about this beer as well. Yeah, so a little bit of chocolate sponge, a little bit of yeah, chocolate sponge, chocolate muffin, I think. There's a little slight touch of nutty character in there. You've got some nice chocolatey notes as well. The chocolate side of this beer is quite interesting. It's maybe, it smells quite milky, maybe a 40% cocoa chocolate, but there is that little element of dark chocolate in there as well, which is nice. So yeah, the darker chocolate kind of lingers there at the back of the nose almost, but yeah, it's mostly a kind of 40% cocoa chocolate that comes out of this one, a kind of milky chocolate, which I think is great. But sitting on top of that, you have a really nice yeah, sitting on top of that, you've got a lot of brown sugar in this one, and of course with the addition of honey, that makes sense. So yeah, the brown sugar in this one, you can smell the sweet caramel. There's the roasty toasty, yeah, roasty toasty brown sugar as well. But the honey's just got this lovely smoothness to it actually. Japanese honey, I think, always is a little bit distinctive, but a very bright brown sugar. But there's definitely some sweet caramel and kind of fudgy notes in the beer there as well, sitting on top of this chocolate. As I say, there's a wee bit of nuttiness to the beer as well. So yeah, the way everything pieces together in this one, I think, is really, really nice. Is there any more we need to say about that? The only other thing I would add is that you can smell, I think part of the chocolate and part of the brown sugar is being pushed a little bit by I think part of the brown sugar and chocolate has been pushed by the lactose in this one. Normally when you get lactose in the beer, it kind of, I always feel it gives you that little touch of almost vanilla quality to it. But yeah, not too much in this case. But I think that covers the more malty side of the beer actually. So yeah, on the yeasty side of things, the yeasty side of this beer for sure, it's got a little bit of, there's a tiny little bit of that almost phenolic Christmas puddingy kind of variety. So yeah, there's a little bit of that Christmas puddingy type note to it. Some rye bread for sure, again the chocolate sponge. Yeah, rye bread, chocolates at the back of the nose, rye bread, chocolate sponge, maybe a tiny little bit of that phenolic Christmas puddingy type note. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else to say. I think that covers the malty and yeasty side of the beer. So the hoppy and fruity side of things then, and remember, stouts are not the most hop forward of styles. In fact, in England, I think they mainly used a little bit of Bramling's Cross or Fuggles in these beers. So I'm curious to see how this one turns out in that regard. But yeah, the green component of this beer, you do get a little bit of, there's a little bit of earthiness coming out of this one. There is a little touch of that kind of cigarette-y, ashy type thing, so that makes me wonder if they've used a wee bit of Fuggles in this beer. Or Fuggles, I'm never sure how to pronounce it. So yeah, there's a wee bit of that going on. You do have some nice, there's a little bit of herbal character too. I think there's English hops in this, just because of that earth, the way that, pardon me, the earthy, herbal, grassy sort of note comes out of this beer. I'm pretty sure it's English hops. But yeah, a little bit of floral character, a little bit of grassiness, and then of course you've got the fruity side of things. So let's just have a wee look at that. For me, the fruity side of the beer, it's yeah, the fruity side of the beer for me is it's mainly, there's a little bit of black currant to it, a little bit of blackberry. I don't know, would we say plum? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think a little bit of a little touch of raisin, little touch of plum further up in the nose. But then yeah, mainly blackberry and black curranty type characters. But there's something telling me that it's either Bramling's Cross or Fuggles from England that's been used to hop this beer. But all in all, the aroma of this one is really quite interesting. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time to try this one. I just realised I never actually showed you the Derailleur Brewworks symbol there. If the camera will focus on that, you can see it right there. I think it's really nice, just the buildings and then the cornfields underneath. But yeah, beautiful artwork on this can in any case. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one and see what it's all about. This one is the Black Rain DD Town, a 5% sweet milk stout, whatever you want to call it, with honey and lactose in it, from Derailleur Brewworks in Nishinari in the southern part of Osaka here in Kansai, Japan. Slanju, skål, cheers, kanpai. Ooh, yeah. That's an interesting one. This beer, right? This is all about the aftertaste, right? In the beginning, when you take it in, very, very clean and very, very slick, but you get all the flavour out of this one, or well, not all the flavour, but you get a big whap of the flavour out of this one in the aftertaste. And this beer actually has quite a little bit of roasty toasty character to it as well. But yeah, I'll definitely say it's not the sweetest of milk stouts or sweet stouts that I've come across, but I like this. I do like this actually. Yeah, so as I've often said in my Japanese reviews, Japanese craft beer always has this element of drinkability to it. So, you know, the Japanese view beer is something that's meant to be light drinkable and, you know, clears the throat. So you will very, very often find with Japanese craft beers that mouthfeel is kind of replicated in the beer, and this one's no exception to that. So, yeah, I have to say, this is a really, really quite nicely done sweet stout. Gets a thumbs up from me. Something a bit different, and that's what you want after 4,000 odd. Yeah, after 4,000 odd videos, you do want things that are going to test your palate a little bit. But yeah, this is a nice beer. It'd be nice to try this one on tap down at the RampantLionReviews cafe. That would be really good. But yeah, let's do as we always do with this one then, and just break it down and describe the flavour for you a bit more in depth. So middle third of your palate then. So yeah, for me, middle third of your palate, the backbone of the beer, you do have that element of roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in there. You can feel that right away. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get that little bit of woodiness. You get that little bit of woodiness, which comes out further into the aftertaste. So yeah, you've got the roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, the wee bit of woodiness in there. Then on top of that, there's a slight element of cracker. And I'm trying to figure out what comes next. I think it's a bit of there is a little bit more of like a kind of chocolate, a dry chocolate muffin, chocolate sponge cake. So yeah, the roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, wee touch of cracker, then yeah, the sort of chocolate sponge cake, and then above that, I think you start to get the more bready notes. So there's a kind of rye bready character in there, and then yeah, you've got a more wholemeal bready character sitting above that. Yeah, so the way that goes together, I think is really nice as well. Yeah, so for me, after you get above the bready layers, and I would say that the bready layers are interesting because it almost feels in a way that some of the chocolate is kind of infused throughout them. But yeah, above the kind of brown bready layer, you have the chocolate side of the beer coming out, and further, obviously, as I've often said on the channel, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. This beer is a lot more kind of bitter and toasty further back on the palate than it is going forward. So there's there's almost like a polarity about this particular beer. So yeah, above the kind of wholemeal brown bready layer, you start to get the chocolate. So further back, it's a bit more of a like maybe 70-80% cocoa chocolate. Then you can feel as you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, it actually becomes more along the lines of like a 30-40% cocoa chocolate, which is nice. And then you've got all the brown sugary notes like sitting on top of that. Yeah. So yeah, above the chocolatey side of things, it's all about the brown sugar. So you can feel there's a sort of toasty brown sugary layer in there, and then you've got this kind of circle in the middle of your palate where it's a little bit drier actually, and it's got more of a kind of, there's a bit of a roasty brown sugary base to it, but then it's more kind of fudgy on top of that, and I think the honey flavour kind of comes out a wee bit more into the aftertaste. The other thing you'll see is that on the front of that middle third of your palate, you'll get a bit of a nutty character pushing its way out into the aftertaste. So yeah, the middle third of your palate, I think, is where the majority of the complexity of this beer is, but this one has made me think a little bit. But yeah, definitely there's a big divide between the back of your palate with this one and the front of your palate. So just bear that in mind. A lot sweeter further forward, a lot more roasty and toasty further back. Yeah, so that's the middle third of your palate. Then let's go to the back third of your palate. I'll have a look at that. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that little bit of bready build up in there. So yeah, you've got the sort of chocolate sponge in the base, the rye bread, and the more wholemeal brown bready character above that. Then the base of that back third of your palate, you have the in the base of the back third of your palate, you've got that roasty toasty, well fired bread crust sitting there, and that really does have a bit of kick to it on the back third of the palate. Then you've got the cracker. Then yeah, you have the sort of really kind of dry chocolate sponge in there. Then you've got the rye bready layer, the wholemeal brown bready layer, and you can feel that the sort of chocolatey character just creeps over the top of that malty side on the back third of the palate. But it's almost like a kind of roasty, charred chocolate at this point. So yeah, that is worth bearing in mind with this one. But yeah, above all of that, you start to get the yeasty side of the beer. And the yeasty side of this one's quite interesting. So at its core, you have a kind of Christmas puddingy type quality. You get some of that kind of phenolic-y Christmas puddingy type note. Then round the edge, it's like a more rye bready type character, and yeah, a more kind of toasty, well-fired bread crust, I think, coming out of it as well. So yeah, the way that everything pieces together in this one, I think, is very, very nice. But definitely, yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, really, really nice. Really, really nicely done beer, this one, I have to say. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, it is good stuff, actually. Grows on you the more that you drink of it, I would say. So yeah, let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. I will say, I was talking about English hops in this one earlier. I'd be very curious to know what hop was used in this beer. There wasn't anything said on the website about this. I'm kind of thinking that this one either has quite a high alpha acid American hop, like maybe Chinook or maybe even Columbus, actually, something like that, rather than the English hop, because it's not that ashy and the earthiness is just different almost. The English earthiness is that little bit smoother. So I think it's, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like Columbus that's in this, or maybe CTZ, Columbus Tomahawk Zoops, or something like that. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate, you've got that little bit of earthiness in there. Then as you move further forward, the earthiness does spread and kind of smoothen out a little bit, but there's a wee touch of herbal character, and as you push further forward beyond that, it's more kind of floral and aromatic. But it's got a wee bit of spice in there too. Round the front curve of the palate, it's definitely that little bit lighter and more grassy, I would say, as well. But yeah, quite a bit of hoppy bitterness to this one. Probably the longer you keep it, the more that would mellow out, actually. But yeah, let's round off the tasting then with a wee look at the front third of your palate. So yeah, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there. Again, you've got the sort of chocolate sponge, the rye bread, then the wholemeal brown bread. The base of that front third of your palate is the roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, the cracker, the rye bread, the wholemeal brown bread, stuff like that. And then yeah, you've got the nice kind of fruitiness sitting above that as well, which is good. Yeah, so I will say that above the kind of wholemeal brown bread, you do get a little bit of the chocolate and a wee bit of the brown sugar just creeping forward, and then yeah, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So for me, fruity side of this one is quite, it's definitely not the most prominent flavour of the beer. It's actually a little bit difficult to pick out. So let's just look at that again. So yeah, I think the fruity side of the beer, I mean, at the back of that front third of your palate, you've got maybe more of like a kind of slightly datey type flavour. So yeah, the back half of that oily part on the front third of your palate is more kind of datey. Then as you move further forward, maybe a sort of dry pear, and into the front half of the front third of your palate, it's got just a little touch of like a kind of black curranty note to it. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer really takes a backseat to everything else, and the thing that lingers there is that kind of dry chocolate sponge, some of the roasty toasty bread crust, and a wee bit of the kind of hoppy spice almost as well, just a wee touch of the fruity character. The honey kind of lingers there as well. But yeah, all in all, flavour wise, it's a really interesting beer. I've enjoyed it, and it's been my first low ABV stout in quite some time. As a sweet stout though, I think it maybe, if it is, they're not really marketing it as a sweet stout. That seems to be what Untappd and things have put this one as. But yeah, it's definitely quite well balanced in that sense. The front part of your palate's kind of is definitely sweeter, of course, and then the back third of your palate is absolutely more it's absolutely got more of a roasty toasty, well fired type vibe to it, I would say. So yeah, all in all, a really interesting beer, this one, I have to say. So yeah, thumbs up to Derailleur Brewworks for this. But let's round off with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. For me, this beer is mid-bodied, maybe pushing toward the top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. It's got it's got that typical Japanese cleanliness to it, I would say, as well. Your IBU in this one, this has got to be about 60 or 70 IBUs, probably 70 to be honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more though. But the malt base, roasty and toasty underneath, smooth in the middle, and quite that little bit more dry and sweet on top. A little touch of fruity character, and then the way that all of that kind of pieces together, I think, is nice. But one of the more roasty toasty sweet stouts that I've come across, that's for sure. But yeah, definitely cool to try something from the darker end of the spectrum from Derailleur Brewworks, and we will need to have a wee look at some of their other beers going forward as well. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Black Rain DD Town, a 5% sweet stout with honey and lactose in it from Derailleur Brewworks in Nishinari here in Osaka. My first review in a wee while, and my first of this next round of Japanese beer reviews. And this one might well publish on Christmas Eve. So for those of you who celebrate Christmas on the 24th, a very Merry Christmas to you, and we'll see what we can produce over the next wee while. But I'll be seeing you guys very soon. Thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Derailleur Brewworks as well. And I will catch you guys in another review very, very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and kanpai.